Hello, you beautiful cycling fans. I'm on the edge of my seat, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. Did we just witness the greatest Tour de France stage in living memory? I don't know about that, but it was definitely one of the most dramatic. Definitely one of the most dramatic I can remember. Racking my brain just before I came on air here to try and think of a stage that was more dramatic, and I really can't think of one. So, fortune favoured the brave today as stage 19 was cancelled. So I'm going to pick the bones out of that. I'm going to talk about the six-way race for the Tour de France that we had going into today. I'm going to talk about a favourite abandoning, the French resistance failing apart, and the stage cancelled. This podcast could be 9.5 hours long and I still wouldn't cover all the stuff, but I'm going to try and be respectful of your time and keep it to roughly the regular length, 25-30 minutes. So we're witnessing the Tour de France stage like no other. Today had no stage winner. That's right, no stage winner. So where to even start with this one? So I suppose the main drama at the start of the race was Thibaut Pinot. Thibaut Pinot clearly started the race with an injury, and he didn't get very far. He abandoned the Tour de France today in floods of tears. You got to be a pretty heartless person to not feel for Thibaut Pinot. So his director sportif was saying that we knew that Thibaut was suffering, but we tried to race on. They told French television it's a muscle tear problem, which he got when he avoided a crash 2 days ago. He suffered yesterday, but today there was nothing he could do. That makes it the fourth time the Pinots failed to finish the Tour de France. He's pulled out of the Tour de France in 2013, he pulled out in 2016, and he pulled out in 2017. And obviously this year he also pulled out of the Giro in 2018 when he got pneumonia. So really sad to see Pinot leaving. He animated the race, and I would expected no less from him today. So very sad to see Thibaut leaving. He had a teammate with him as he abandoned, and he hugged his teammate, and he broke down in floods of tears. You know, reminiscent of Kelly breaking his collarbone and tears leaving the Vuelta, or Wiggins 2011 with the collarbone break when he was yet to be crowned Tour de France champion. Very, very sad to see. And this year's Tour de France, no matter what happens tomorrow, it'll be remembered as a Tour de France that'll live long in the hearts and minds of the French public for years to come. It may be the Tour that's reinvigorated and remotivated the youth of France. Like, imagine you're a French kid, every French kid on the streets of Paris and Bordeaux and Nice, they're pulling on the yellow jerseys and they're pretending they're Alaphilippe, they're attacking climbs pretending they're Pinot. Like, it's brilliant. It's completely empowered. It's, you know, in Ireland here we had the Italian 90 effect in football, and, you know, one generation later we had our most successful football team. Who's to say that this tour is not a catalyst for French youth to really spring them and use the Pinot and Alaphilippe as shoulders to stand on and reach even further? But let's talk about what happened today. So it was called the Liseron, horse category climb, highest altitude of the race. Team Ineos, Kwiatkowski and Moscon were brutal again. Dylan van Baarle done a ride on the front, and Walt Powell, he was actually up the road, they brought him back, and Walt Powell's set a good tempo, and it's the first time we've seen Ineos really take control of the race into one of these hard climbs and set a pace that was starting to put some decent riders in trouble. George Bennett from Lotto was one of the notable victims. He had a smash yesterday, so that could have been affecting him too. Nairo Quintana wasn't able to handle the pace, so that tells you how hot it was. The pace was hot, and then Walt Powell's finished his turn, and boom, like we asked for, Geraint Thomas. We called for it yesterday. We said the old shake and bake was the way to go, old school shake and bake. Thomas went, and everyone that we would expect responded. GC basically responded, where we had, you know, Bernal, Thomas, Kruiswijk, Buchmann, all coming together, plus Laurens de Plus was there as well. I like that. Was there as well. So it was a select group. You could see the first crack starting to appear in Alaphilippe. Just as he was guarding his composure, boom, the bake part of our shake and bake tactic. Bernal goes. This time, no one can follow. Bernal starts gapping people immediately. Thomas and the boys respond. Boom, Alaphilippe cracks. He goes out the back with Richie Porte. And that's where the drama really started for today. Alaphilippe, he fought all the way up the climb. But by the top of the climb, Alaphilippe was 45 seconds behind Bernal in the virtual general classification. He had surrendered the yellow jersey in the virtual classification at the top of the climb. Now, maybe in Alaphilippe's head, he has 60 seconds to make up on a 30-kilometre descent to come back to the Thomas group containing the rest of the GC favourites. And then a further minute ahead of that, he has Bernal, who's dropped Yates over the climb, and Yates has got back in on the descent. So then we get news on the descent from the race organiser that the race has been stopped. So the descent is perfectly dry. The riders can't make any sense of what's going on. The group of GC favourites has Rigoberto Urán in it behind, which Urán has done a ride and he's moving up GC as well. And it's a few of the lads who've been caught in the break, Vincenzo Nibali and a couple of other guys who were in the day's early break. So they're going down the descent. It's Bernal and it's Yates at the front of the race, and then they get news from the commissar. The chief comm, Gary McElroy, gives them the news. The race is stopped. What the fuck? A Tour de France stage is stopped. The vital stage, the Queen stage, and it's stopped. Nobody knows what's going on. Commentators are in disbelief. You know, Wiggins on the back of the motorbike's in disbelief. The riders are in disbelief. Directors are in disbelief. And I'm like, I can barely drink me tea with the shock. We see pictures later of what it was like at the finish in Tina. The finish, rewind. The finish wasn't bad. We've heard Wiggins went through it on the motorbike and he said there was about 500 metres of localised very bad weather. Now, it was very bad. Today, the big winner was global warming because it pelted down. Roads were flooded, landslides impassable. I tweeted a picture of it there. If you're not following us on Twitter, shameless plug for Twitter, get on there and follow us, A1_coaching. Twitter's where all the crack's at, isn't it? Twitter is it's like life's water cooler. All the other platforms are a little bit pretentious and take themselves a little bit too seriously. Instagram's a little bit, look how cool my fake life is, and Facebook's a little bit, I'm going to rob all your data and I'm going to sell it. And then I'm going to, create some sort of world domination Libra coin. But Twitter's just, it's cool. Jack Dorsey's a cool motherfucker. If you haven't listened to a good episode of Joe Rogan interviewing Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, that's pure fire if you're looking for something on your long ride. But yeah, so we tweeted a picture of it on Twitter, and the road's completely impassable. So in that respect, it was the right decision. Now, I'm going to analyse this with the benefit of, I'm recording this 40 minutes after the stage is finished. I haven't heard a lot of the reaction to what's going on. So again, I'm a little bit in a vacuum here. But I don't think my opinions have been a million miles off what's been accepted as the majority or prevailing opinion the last few days. Had some controversial stuff, but nothing too wild. So I think there will be an outcall of people saying and agreeing with me here that it was a great decision to stop the race. You've got to prioritise rider safety. We had Sagan a couple of days ago talking about the CPA does nothing for riders and they're not protected from the extreme heat. Christian Prudhomme, the director of the Tour de France, he made a call. Big boy shoes, big boy pants, they're big boy calls. He made the big boy call and he stopped the race. So hats off to him. You got to give him credit for actually making the call. Was it the correct call? Now, in the benefit of hindsight, I can sit down and I can pick the bones out of this, and you can do the same at home listening to this, and we can have 20, 30 different media news outlets and articles informing our opinion. He didn't have the benefit of any of this. The road looked really bad, but as Wiggins said, it was isolated to a 300 to 400 metre stretch, and then the climb was apparently quite clear to the top. Could they have stopped the riders in the tunnel, allowed them to get kitted, whatever, figured out a transport across the 400 or 500 metre section and restarted them with the time gaps? I don't know. It seems like it would have been logistically quite difficult to do. I don't think they were prepared for this. I'm not sure how that would have worked. I don't know how it would have worked. I heard people talking about potentially that was a solution. I just don't see that really as a workable solution. It loses all the momentum. And again, where do we stop the riders? And I think that's the question. If you're stopping them and restarting them, at what point do you stop them? For me, when you decide to stop them and take times at the top of the climb, which is what they've ultimately done, they've taken the times at the top of the climb and used that to determine GC. It's a very arbitrary point to take times. Why not take times at the bottom of the climb before the climb starts? Why not take the times, 15k down the climb, when a kilometre before the obstruction starts? Why not take times there? Alaphilippe took 30 seconds out of them on the descent yesterday, roll back up with ease. He's a minute behind today, but only 45 seconds away from being in yellow jersey. It's a 30-kilometre descent. At what point on the descent was the obstruction? Could they have let the race run until the obstruction and stopped it there? I think that's the crux of the decision, and that's what French fans are really going to be questioning, and French fans are really going to be disappointed with. I don't know where the best place. I don't know how you make that call, and I don't know if there's a right decision. The big winner today, it's Egan Bernal, undoubtedly. Bernal, he's as weak as water when he's on the flat on his own. He can't descend for shite. He descends like a 50p piece. He was going to lose time. Was he going to get reabsorbed by the Kruijswijk group? Kruijswijk still had Laurens de Plus in there. I think Buchmann still had a teammate in there. Rigoberto Urán was in there. Vincenzo Nibali was in there. It looked like a group where there could have been a fair deal of cooperation. Could we have seen them coming back up, the Egan Bernals? Could we have seen Alaphilippe coming back up to that group? There's a minute separating both groups, like a minute from Alaphilippe to the Thomas group, a minute from the Thomas group to Yates and Bernal. Could we have seen Gruppo Compacto into the bottom of the last climb? I don't think we'll ever know. We don't know how Alaphilippe was feeling. He definitely looked like he was descending quite well. I don't know what the right decision is. Where do you take them times? It just seems like that everyone, from what I heard and read, everyone was just quite accepting the fact that we take times at the top of the climb. I don't agree. I think some people have strengths. Egan Bernal, he's born at extreme altitude. His climbing is his strength. Alaphilippe is a very, very good descender. It's a skill as legitimate as climbing, which takes training, which takes work. That's a very strong part of Alaphilippe's skill set. So to prioritise Bernal's skill set and dispossess Alaphilippe of his skill set, it seems quite arbitrary and something that I think needs further clarification from the organisers as to why that happens, if that's precedent, if that's in the rule book, or if that's just a decision they've made on the fly. Because I'd be very, very disappointed when I go home and reflect on that if I was Julian Alaphilippe. Did the cancellation saves Alaphilippe's podium is another consideration we got to think about. We don't know what sort of condition Alaphilippe's in. He's dropped on the second last climb of the day. He doesn't get back on the descent. The guys work in the valley and he cracks completely on the final climb. Do we have a podium that looks like Bernal, Thomas, Kruijswijk? Do we have a podium that's Bernal, Thomas, Buchmann? I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that question. It's possible, but it's equally as possible that he comes back on the descent like we seen yesterday. So, I don't know if speculation on it gets us anywhere. I would like to think the decision to stop it, to take times at the top of the climb, wasn't completely arbitrary, that it was backed from, there's some precedent there, or there's some UCI rule there, because otherwise, if I had went the other way and they took it at the bottom of the climb, near the obstruction, they would have called it a hometown decision. They would have said, Christian Prudhomme is the Frenchman, he's prioritising Alaphilippe. It's nearly a no-win decision, and so I would just amend them for making the decision. And Brailsford was talking after the stage, and We'll get on to the logistical nightmare in a second that this whole thing is for teams and transport and recovery and all that type of stuff. But we had Brailsford talking about fortune favours the brave. Brailsford looks like the sort of man who you'd love to slap a 99 ice cream off his head. It just has a nice shine off it. He said, I think first and foremost, there's obviously been a landslide, quite a considerable landslide. I think first and foremost, we need to make sure everyone's all right. You know, for fans and people on the roadside, some of the images I've seen, there's bike racing and then there's health and safety element. We just need to make sure everyone is all right first and foremost. That's my reaction. Yeah, right, that's grand. That's not important, Dave. Then he said, fortune favours the brave. As we said this morning, we're going to take on today. We haven't been maybe as strong as we have been in the past all race, but today was the day where we thought if there was anyone who could make a difference on the Iseran, but it was going to be hard to get there. I actually thought the guys rode really well, from Dylan Van Barle getting in the break to Castrovia and the guys, they rode really well. Walt Powell's obviously really pushing the tempo at the bottom of the climb. We had a plan and we executed. Garant went first, Egan went over the top, and who knows what would have happened after that. To be fair, it was nice to get to the top or either of them in that situation. It wasn't what we were hoping for, but obviously it was quite a lot of downhill to come and another climb to come. But we don't control the weather. We don't control the circumstances. We're really happy in one way and kind of slightly concerned for everyone else, if I'm honest. It's a bit of a mixed feelings, really. Like, what's he talking about? What is he talking about? Mixed feelings. They're after taking the yellow jersey with a decision that's put them into the yellow jersey. Fortune does favour the brave. I'll give him that. I think it was Rodney Trotter who said, no, it was Derek Trotter, good old Del boy, said fortune favours the brave, Rodney, and it's very true. They do deserve that because they played it, but cycling fans have been robbed of that finale. You know, if only there was another day that we could race, another day that's normally just reserved for wearing green wigs and drinking champagne and rolling easy through the streets of Paris. No, that's completely unrealistic. Completely unrealistic. Anyway, another man who absolutely got robbed today, Yates. He was going for his hat-trick of stage wins and he was robbed. He's up front with Bernal. He's not going to give him a touch of help on the way down in the valley or on the way up. He's going to sit there, he's going to smile, and he's going to hop on with a couple of K to go and say, thank you very much for my third stage win. He's been robbed of that, so he must be one of the most disappointed lads today, sitting at home this evening. Then we have the logistical nightmare of this. You know, these teams, all their buses are parked at the finish, and they've their clean kit in that, they've their clothes in that, they've their recovery gear in that, and transfers back to the hotels are calculated from that point. So it's optimising their recovery for getting back and getting hot food and massages and stuff like that. And now they're stuck. The cars, there's only 2 follow cars for each team. That's not enough space for all the riders. They don't have recovery bags in them. They don't have clean civvies for the guys. They don't have enough capacity to transport all the bikes. So I'd say it's an absolute disaster playing out on in the Alps there today. And where they stopped them, the weather wasn't bad at the time. But who knows if that weather front was just going to shift down a little bit to the boys. Another man who didn't look happy was Rigoberto Urán. Him and Nibali seemed to be having a go at each other, in Nibali in a very this is one of the times I miss video as a medium, in a very Italian sort of 2 fingers and the thumb pressing against the 2 fingers gesture at him. Didn't look happy. Urán, 2 of them having words. I would imagine Urán was keen to push on, and Vincenzo was trying to tell him, look pal, no point in pushing on, the race has been cancelled. Just confusion reigns. Confusion was king. Actually, I'd give a confusion the joint stage win. Confusion, climate control, the joint stage win today. What else have we got going on? Oh, we had Brian Smith today, listened to in Eurosport commentary, the Scottish lad. If anyone hasn't heard me yesterday talking about Brian Smith, he's wore the same t-shirt in a different colour every single day. But Brian actually pulled out a shirt today, so that was well appreciated. It was a bit of a scandalous shirt now. It was none of the sort of style we're used to on Eurosport of Adam Bloyd. Some pretty cool shorts he's been pulling out. The leadership debate on Team Ineos, it's well and truly settled now. The leader of Team Ineos is Egan Bernal. Egan Bernal is the Maillot Jaune in the Tour de France at 22 years old. Have we just entered the Egan Bernal era of cycling? Who's to say he could have 15 years of absolute dominance to come? He needs to learn how to time trial, but he's so potent in the hills. We haven't seen anything like it in a long time. And if he wraps up this Tour de France, which I suspect he will tomorrow, this could be the beginning of a very beautiful reign for Colombian cycling. Thomas is a soldier. Thomas will fall into line. Thomas he put in some great performances through the years in support of Bradley Wiggins and then Chris Froome and Richie Porte, and so Thomas is going to do the same again. Thomas is going to fall into line and he's going to play the world's strongest domestique tomorrow, and I don't expect we'll see Thomas make any bids tomorrow. Like, we might see Alaphilippe crack and an Ineos 1-2, but I don't suspect Thomas is going to attack and endanger Bernal's yellow jersey tomorrow. I think Thomas is going to be quite happy and look on tour as quite a successful defence of his Tour de France title, especially with a teammate taking the jersey. Look, once the dust settles on this, I don't agree with the decision today to take the time at the top of the climb. I don't suspect a lot of the French cycling fans or public will agree, but I think when the dust settles, and I had my year racing in France, so I'm going to claim myself as an adopted French son. I think that they're going to look back and they're going to see this was quite a magical Tour de France for them. Like, today was a bad day. Bardet, I think, lost the King of the Mountains jersey. Pinot abandoned, and Alaphilippe lost the Maillot Jaune. It's a bad day. French cycling has been well used to bad days. They have not seen a lot of success in the last decade. David Moncoutier, he was a great rider. Big fan of Moncoutier. I was just trying to think back there to French riders who've brought them a bit of success. We're entering an era now where they're potentially looking at, not more than potentially, that's not strong enough, they're most probably looking at seeing a lot of success. Should Alaphilippe change? Should Alaphilippe become now a 3-week tour rider? If you can hold the yellow jersey for that long in the Tour de France, you're a GC rider. Do we want to see him sacrificing the classics? He's won the Strade Bianche this year. He won Milan San Remo. He's a lot more to give on the classics, but he's also a lot more to give as a Tour de France or GC stage racer in 3-week Grand Tours. So we need to think, Alaphilippe needs to go away and think, what does he want to be? Because the kid has the world at his feet and he can be whatever he wants to be. A bit of a Peter Pan type character at the moment. I think the French are going to look back and they're going to say this was a phenomenal tour entertainment-wise, but it's a phenomenal breakthrough tour for France as well. And we have the team Ineos, Dave Brailsford. We painted them yesterday as the pantomime villain. They are the team everyone loves to hate. Getting booed up all the climbs, which I think is fine because you're allowed to be a partisan fan. They're French. People are allowed. We don't like the dominant. We like to see the underdog. It's something in us. We like to see the underdog do well, and I'm no different. I'm not a team Ineos or team Sky hater, but it would have been nice to see Alaphilippe holding on. It would have been nice to see that sort of dominance challenged, but it looks like they're gonna do it again. They're 4th different Tour de France winner since they started the project. We'd obviously Wiggins in 2012 with an amazing season where he went to, I think he won, did he win Swiss Dauphiné, Criterium Dauphiné, Tour de France and Olympics all in the same year. It's a pretty he might even won Paris-Nice that year as well, I can't remember. It was a pretty mental year for Wiggins. Then we had the Froome era. Thomas last year capping off his Tour de France win with a win on the top of Alpe d'Huez. I was actually there and it was phenomenal. Just what struck me on that last year, and I remember thinking it at the time, through a haze of beer goggles and inhaling smoke from flares and just an onslaught of Dutch corner of noise and just smell, and just through the crowds as they parted came Egan Bernal on the front, like a mountain Sherpa guiding Thomas up the mountain, and you couldn't help but think, he's a future Tour de France winner. He was 21 years old and he was at the best in the Tour de France, and it looks like he's going to fulfil that potential. So we Wiggins, Froome, Thomas and now Bernal all under the Brailsford project that look like they're going to seal it again this year. Tomorrow, what's going to happen? Who's going to attack? We've 130 kilometres from Albertville to Val Thorens. We haven't gone up Val Thorens that often. We've 3 climbs tomorrow, and that culminates obviously in the Val Thorens climb, which we haven't used since 1994. Incidentally, we had a Colombian winner up there last time we were up. The GC sitting at the moment with Colombian Egan Bernal, 22 years old, leading the Tour de France, with the housewife's favourite Julian Alaphilippe at 45 seconds, Geraint Thomas at 103, Kruijswijk at 115 and Buchmann at 142. Who's going to attack tomorrow? Look, I don't think Alaphilippe's going to attack. I don't think he's going to risk his podium position. I think he's got to be looking now. Everyone's looking to maintain at the moment, I would think, with the exception of Kruijswijk. He's not a very attacking rider though. He hasn't much about him, but he had Laurens de Plus there in the final today. He normally has George Bennett, arguably has the strongest team. Can he attack? I'd say his best chance of getting on the podium is Alaphilippe cracking tomorrow. I just can't see Thomas and I can't see Bernal being shifted. For me, it's an Egan Bernal Tour de France win. He's the Tour de France champion elect at the moment. It's his to lose. I'm going to go out and I'm going to call the podium. I'm going to say it's Bernal, Thomas, Kruijswijk. I think French hearts are going to get broken again tomorrow. I think Alaphilippe went deep on the climb today. I'd love to see him going down guns blazing tomorrow. I think every cycling fan would. Imagine if we see an attack from him illuminating the race. I would absolutely love it, but I'm just not too sure. And yesterday we even talked about Alaphilippe saying if he did lose the jersey, he'd love to lose it to Thibaut Pinot, but obviously with Thibaut Pinot abandoning it today, it's a double kick in the teeth for Alaphilippe, and I'm gonna leave you with this one. Alaphilippe said afterwards, "I don't think I can get the yellow jersey back. It was a dream to have worn it for so long. It was longer than I could have ever imagined. I pushed myself every day, and even today on the last climb and on the descent, until I ended up in the car. I want to thank all my supporters. I don't have any regrets." Julian Alaphilippe, chapeau. Guys, thanks for listening to the A1 Show Tour de France podcast. Again, as I said yesterday, we don't have a show sponsor at the moment. So what I would ask you to do, in lieu of me shilling show sponsor stuff to you, is to subscribe to the podcasts, leave a review for the podcast, share it around, recommend it to a friend. And we're back tomorrow with more of these crazy Tour de France insights. That was honestly phenomenal, and I'm actually thankful to have this podcast as an outlet to vent about today, because I needed to get so much of this off my chest, as I'm sure you do as well. So don't be shy to start debates in the comments on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I'll get back to as much as I can. Guys, thanks for listening to the rant, and until tomorrow, viva la Tour and viva la Resistance. Come on, Alaphilippe.